Welcome back to Follow Through with LVB. My guest today was born to be behind the microphone. He's the voice of New Zealand football. He's the best MC I've ever witnessed. He's a News Talk ZB radio sport legend. He's a family man. He's a man full of class. Every time I catch up with him, he's so positive, so encouraging, and I just feel so good every time afterwards. This is Jason Pine.
Mate, what an intro. It feels like I've written it myself. Thanks, Logan. It's great to be here, mate. And can I just say that, on the occasions that we catch up, I always walk away feeling energised as well. So I'm sure this will be the same. Good to join you on Follow Through with LVB.
It's just such a pleasure to have a guy who's just so comfortable behind the mic. That intro, I practiced it, and having seen you do many intros, I was thinking, right, this is one thing. If there's one thing I have to do is nail this intro, but it's it's a pleasure to have you here. Now, you're a sports nuff. Did you watch the Super Bowl yesterday?
I did watch the Super Bowl, although I must say that I'm obviously a generation older than you, so my sporting wheelhouse is cricket, it's rugby, it's football. American sport is more in the wheelhouse of my son, 16-year-old Johnny, and he is deeply invested in American sport. In NFL, he's a Minnesota Vikings fan, follows the various NBA teams. But so that's a long-winded way of saying, yes, I did watch it. I think Super Bowl's more than about what happens down on the field. There's so much wrapped around it, and the way that the entertainment package is pulled together for television audiences, but also for those who are there. It's more than just a game, right? Kansas City, they're building a dynasty. What's that, 3 and 5 years? First team to go back-to-back for a couple of decades. Patrick Mahomes, what's he got now, 3? Tom Brady must be in his sights. He got 7, didn't he? So Mahomes isn't even 30 yet. So... Yeah, it's an occasion. Look, I wouldn't say it's my favourite sport in the world, Lokes, but when you've got an occasion like that, you kind of got to tune in, right?
Yeah, it is. It's like a 5-hour, 6-hour extravaganza. There's people that tune in for the Super Bowl halftime show and just to watch that. But I definitely was sitting down, and that last couple of minutes, what I do like about football is that it's just reliant on these one plays. And it's, these guys, the defensive line, and it's the quarterbacks, and guys got to run the certain line. The offensive coordinator's got to call the play. They've got to try and outthink the defense. The defense are trying to outthink the offense. And funny enough, the play that they won it with last night was the same play that they won it with a couple years ago. So, I find it, American sport is just on another level.
Yeah.
On another level.
Yeah, and you're right about, and the way that they break it all down, particularly I think in NFL compared to the likes of basketball or baseball, where yes, there are tactics and things that go on, but the X's and O's on the whiteboards for NFL are at another level, aren't they? And the other thing about NFL is how few games there actually are. You compare it to a NBA basketball season, 82 games. Major League Baseball, 162 games. In NFL, scarcity, man, and less is more. That's why you don't get dynasties necessarily, because teams don't have the chance to build up momentum, I don't think, and you don't get like a Chicago Bulls winning 3 NBA championships in a row, or the Lakers, or wherever it is. And so that makes what the Kansas City Chiefs are doing at the moment even more extraordinary, really. But it's the Americans do sport so well. I know you've been to sport over there. I've been lucky enough as well to be to an NFL game and an NBA game back end of last year. And the way they do it, and the way they put the fan in the middle of it all, and the way they make it so easy for you to give them your money for things like merchandise and food and beverage, is just on another level.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. So being a sports broadcaster as you are, which sport would you want to do? And I know probably the obvious answer would be football, but out of all the sports, which one would you love to commentate?
Yeah, football's kind of where it's kind of my bread and butter, I guess you'd say. It's been a sport I've loved since the age of 8 or 9 when I watched New Zealand, the All Whites, qualify for the World Cup in '82 for the first time. So it's been the one that has been deep in my blood, I guess, for the longest. But having said that, you look around and you think, wouldn't it be amazing to commentate a World Cup final in cricket, for example? Or wouldn't it be amazing to do a Super Bowl? Or what about a Wimbledon tennis final? Something which is so iconic that it's right at the peak of sports broadcasting. But then I come back to football, and my other love is cricket. I could quite easily sit on the bank for 5 days and watch a test match. I could sit on the bank for 4 days and watch a Plunket Shield match. I love red ball cricket, and so I'd think to myself, wouldn't it be great to commentate a World Cup cricket final with New Zealand against Australia, with a slightly different result than what happened in 2015, perhaps.
Exactly, and Ian Smith is known for the barest of margins. The way he commentated that, and that moment is now in our history and everyone's history. As a commentator, how do you prepare for that moment? And football as well, because these goals sometimes come out of nowhere, or you can kind of see it coming, or wherever it is. But you want to be able to get the right words and the phrase. And do you plan a lot of these things, or does it just come off the cuff?
It's a great question, Lugs. I don't think, if I take it back to Smithy, I'm almost positive Ian Smith wouldn't have had the barest of margins planned. I don't think, and knowing Smithy a little bit as I do, I think a lot of his best stuff is spontaneous. Yes, he preps, and he's got the experience built from years and years of doing it, that he can look at a game and he can pick what the storylines are, but he also has a great way of engaging you in just the minutiae of the game, just the very tiny bits that I absolutely love about the game. To answer your question, I think what I can only speak for myself because everybody's different, but what I try to do is I prepare for the game as a whole, and then when those moments arrive, I think you have to trust your preparation, but also trust your instincts, and almost, I think, as well, sit with the crowd in those moments.
Right.
Because while we are broadcasters and impartiality is important, I kind of feel as though you have to project what the moment is to those watching at home. It doesn't mean being a fan or just losing yourself in this ecstasy of emotion, but I think you kind of have to do justice to the moment. And with football, you're right. Goals only come along, every so often, and they're the things that are going to get replayed. So you don't want to get them wrong. And I think the worst thing for a commentator is to call the wrong goal scorer, for example. If it's Smith who scored, but you call Jones, then that's going to, the goal's going to get replayed, and people go, oh, he's got it wrong. It's not Smith, it's Jones, or vice versa. So, yeah, you hope that you can do these moments justice. You're not always going to. You're not always going to, but, I look back at some of the stuff that I've had the pleasure of calling, and you're your own worst critic, obviously. But you think to yourself, okay, well, I think I've enhanced that moment. I've given people a sense of the emotion, what it meant to the person, what it meant to the players, the game, whatever it might be. So yeah, I think that's a very long-winded way of saying that. Yeah, you kind of have to trust that when those moments arrive, all the prep you've done and all the experience you've had will allow you to get the words right.
So if we cast back to 2009 at Westpac Stadium. One of the biggest games in all weights history against Bahrain, and a penalty was saved. Can you remember what you said?
Yeah, I do. All I said was, it was Mohamed Adnan was the taker of the kick. Mark Paston's in goal, and all I said was, Adnan takes the kick, Paston saves it, and all I said was, saved. And then I just let the crowd take over.
Right.
So I said one word. I just said, saved. Because that was a radio commentary as well.
Yeah.
So therefore, people are listening in, and all they want to know is whether the ball's gone in or whether it's been saved. I get the feeling, Logs, if I tried to say any more, it would have been drowned out by the crowd. Because that night, Rory Fallon scored a goal in the first half. Cacophony of sound. When the final whistle went at the end, just pandemonium. But when Mark Paston saved that penalty, that is the loudest sound I have ever heard at a sporting event. And it was just Adnan to take. Saved! And that was it. That was all I said, one word. And I look back now, I'm pretty happy with it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No regrets.
No, I don't think I could have. And sometimes and it's different now. I've transitioned to television, radio. You do have to paint the pictures. But I think on that occasion that was all that was needed really, because we afterwards we said down to Paston's right, and we described the save. But at that moment, at that instant, it was just saved. On television as well, that would have worked as well. In fact, on television, I could have said nothing because we can all see. And that's I got a really good piece of advice when I transitioned from radio to TV from a director, and he said, "Piney, sometimes you just have to let the game breathe."
Wow.
You don't need to. On radio, you're basically constant because you're describing, but on TV, you're enhancing, you're adding to it. I don't have to say, Pine pass this to Van Beek, because everyone can see that. But on the radio, you do have to say that, but you also have to say what part of the pitch they're in. Because if I say Pine passes to Van Beek, that could be anywhere on the pitch.
Yeah. So
just outside the penalty area, Pine. But so they're two different disciplines. I love them both equally. But I haven't thought about that Bahrain game for a little while actually. It was quite something. That's 15 years ago coming up now. That's madness.
And you went on the plane to South Africa as well, and followed the All Whites throughout that. The only team to ever be unbeaten.
Yes.
At a FIFA World Cup. And was that radio or TV?
Yeah, that was radio as well.
Yeah.
So that was. I mean, people often ask, what's been the highlight for you? And that was amazing. The chance to go to a World Cup. I've been watching World Cups since since the All Whites made their first one in 1982, and was that 28 years later? Had the chance to go to one. I often say, like 8-year-old me would never have believed the things I've had the opportunity to do, and that was one of them. To go to South Africa, this country with huge disparity between rich and poor, between the haves and have-nots. To go to Soweto the night before the opening game, where there was, a media event happening there on the street that Nelson Mandela grew up in, and just to feel the history, but what it meant to those people, and then for the All Whites to play so well, and get a last gasp goal for the, to get a draw with Slovakia, to draw with Italy, who were the defending champions. And then 0-0 draw at the end against Paraguay, and as you say, go home unbeaten. It was quite something. Yeah, to be there for a month, and and try and wrap some words around what they were doing. And again, you want to do justice to it. You want people back here to know, just what these guys are sacrificing. And I hope you can give a sense of that during the commentaries. Yeah.
So, is there any commentators around the world that you have looked up to, or any moments that kept you and go, wow, I want to do that? Was that when you were younger, or was it when you got a bit older?
Yeah, I think. When I was younger, I was always I loved all sport growing up, and the radio was always on with Sports Roundup, as it was then, which became Radio Sport. So I used to listen hour upon hour to cricket commentary, really. Alan Richards, Peter Sharp, Ian Galloway, Brian Waddle, and many, many others. Ron Snowden with his big booming voice coming out of the radio, and I used to copy in my own little backyard games. Like I had had one of those like a cricket ball inside a sock on the clothesline, just hitting it back and back and back and back, and so I'd commentate my own games. Same with football, kicking the ball against the the back fence. And commentating, those moments, just copying what I'd heard on the radio, really. And I was a young boy then. But then when you start to get to actually do it, I think everybody has their own style. There are absolutely commentators I admire, lots of them, who I think, man, and I see moments and hear moments, and I think, man, I wish I'd said that.
Yeah.
That is great, because there are things that go down in history as these magnificent moments. But I think, really I've just tried to be myself as much as possible. And I know I'm not going to be everybody's cup of tea. I think that's true of any broadcaster. Even the most popular broadcaster is never going to get 100% positive, acceptance, if you can call it that. But you just, as long as the people who matter are happy with what you're doing, then happy days. But there's a lot of people I admired growing up, copied, and then have tried to kind of forge my own way, really, I guess.
And so for the next, few years or however long you want to be behind the microphone, obviously another World Cup would be an amazing thing to be there and be on television for All Whites to qualify. But how do you get into the other sports? How do you kind of get onto that bandwagon?
Yeah, I think it's a bit like one of my favourite cliches of recent times that I've really liked is your best ability is availability, and for sports people like yourself, it's staying fit, it's it's being present, it's being ready when opportunity knocks, and I think it's the same really. It's just being there and willing to say yeah, I'll give that a crack. As I say, I loved cricket growing up, but I've had very few opportunities to commentate cricket. I've had a couple here at the Basin Reserve where we're recording today, and just again fulfilling a childhood dream of commentating cricket. Sports like rugby. I've had the opportunity to commentate rugby on the radio and have absolutely loved that chance. Commonwealth and Olympic Games, where you get your opportunity to commentate for a radio audience, wrestling, for goodness sake, gymnastics, track and field events. How do you bring those to a radio audience where, they might not really have anything more than just a rudimentary understanding? How do you commentate a game of badminton on the radio and make it sound, engaging, exciting, and allow somebody who's, because often these things are we did Birmingham a couple of years ago, Commonwealth Games, so that's the middle of the night over here. So we know a lot of people just had the little radio, with a little headphone in, just if they couldn't sleep during the night, they might turn this on, and all of a sudden there's a badminton game or some table tennis or whatever. How do we paint the picture for those people, at 3:00 in the morning of a table tennis match, which is happening 12,000 miles away in Birmingham, and make it engaging, interesting, and allow them to actually get a grasp of what's going on. So I think it's just I've been lucky, really, Logan. I've been very, very lucky. I talked about that World Cup before. There have been dozens of football commentators who have never had the chance to go to a World Cup just because the All Whites didn't qualify when they were doing it. I was just in the right place at the right time in 2010. Hope to be again in 2026 if the All Whites can get to the next one. And just to be lucky enough to be in and around at those times. But the thing is, I very rarely say no to things. And in our business, the sports media business isn't a growing business. If anything, media organisations are shrinking.
Right.
So I was talking to Sumo Scotty Stevenson about this recently, and I said, mate, you are just everywhere. You're just like you. Because during the Super Smash, he's in Auckland one day, then he's in Wellington, then he's down in Christchurch, off to Dunedin. I said, mate, you must just not know what day it is. You must be knackered. He goes, Bonnie, I'm energised. And he goes, as well as I do, you never turn down a gig in this business. Yeah. So I think being present and saying yes as often as you feasibly can is probably the answer.
Yeah. And so what from your experience it now, you've had 30 years in the sports broadcasting industry behind the radio. You've seen technology come in and the difference in content producing, the age of social media. How has it changed now? How is radio still kind of relevant, knowing that everyone's on their cell phones and wanting to watch things? And the attention span is so short as well. Yeah,
it's another really good question. Radio's been around for. It's like this is a terrible analogy, but it's like a cockroach. You can't kill it. They thought radio would be killed by television. It wasn't. They thought radio would be killed by CDs. remember compact discs?
Yeah, yeah,
You
yeah.
probably don't
No,
remember those.
I had a Walkman. I was talking to the boys this morning how I used to walk to school for Walkman, and I had another case of CDs in my.
That's it.
Yeah.
That's it. They thought that CDs would kill radio. Didn't. They thought iPods would kill radio. Spotify, Apple Music. They thought those things would kill radio. Hasn't. Podcasts. Radio's still here. Even probably the biggest threat to radio was the internet and being able to access content in any way, shape or form that you wanted, when you wanted. But I think what radio just continues to do is, and when it's done well, is it does the basics right. For example, if you're in the car and you don't necessarily want to, sometimes choice paralyzes action. I go, what do I want to listen to? Do I want to listen to my upbeat 90s playlist on Spotify? Do I want to listen to country? I honestly, I just can't be bothered deciding. I'll just listen to the radio and let them decide for me. But also what it does in a talk sense is it provides company for a lot of people, but also analysis, interaction, engagement. The station I work for, News Talk ZB, is hugely interactive. Do a lot of talkback, a chance to chat to fans and others. And I know
I've got many questions on that. Yeah.
Oh yeah, and I know talkback gets a bit of a bad rap because often it can be seen as just an opportunity for people to whinge. But I actually find it really energizing when it's done well. So I think radio just continues to, if it sticks to its knitting and doesn't try to be what it's not, then I think it has got a future. And I think of cricket commentary, and I think cricket of every sport is the one where radio can at times actually be better than TV. It's hard with a game of rugby or a game of football because people can't. It's hard for people to imagine where the action is happening on the field.
Right.
In cricket, it's not hard. As soon as somebody says Logan Beat coming in from the RO advanced stand end, he's got a couple of slips of gully, a cover, a mid-off, mid-on, I can paint that picture straight away.
Yeah.
Probably more than TV because they've got one shot. The radio's telling me where the fieldsmen are, what the day's like. They say, okay, and whoever it is, Martin Guptill plays one of his office pads out to deep and wicket for one. I can totally picture what's happening. Totally picture what's happening. I know and cricket over hour after hour, the old cliches, you paint fence in the summer and listen to the sport.
Yeah.
Listen to the cricket, basically.
Yeah.
So
Well, it's either that or Van Morrison.
Well, that's right. That's right. Yeah. Yeah. Exactly right.
But I guess our imaginations are a lot more creative than visual sometimes.
Yep.
So that's where radio lies. Is that if you can kind of set the scene, people can then imagine probably better than what they can see.
The other thing is with things like I think of commercials, right? And if a television, if you want to do a television commercial about France, you've got to go to France, really. You want to do a radio commercial about France, you just play a bit of French music, and all of a sudden you're in France. You know what I mean? People can, they hear a bit of whatever it might be. You can probably imagine some French music, and through words and music and sound effects, you can be somewhere 12,000 miles away. If like I say, for TV, you kind of got to go to the Eiffel Tower, really.
Yeah. So
there's a lot of there's a lot of advantages to being an audio medium only, and through the internet, we've gone on to like most of our studios now have cameras in them. A lot of stuff we do out about is filmed. So we have added that layer. But like I said, at the end of the day, we are an audio medium, and I think the explosion of podcasts has shown that is still a very, very consumable medium for people. I'd listen to podcasts as often as I would listen to music now.
Right.
And so audio still has a place, absolutely has a place.
Yeah. You mentioned Talkback.
Yeah.
And sometimes if I need a little bit of entertainment, Talkback might come on the background. So can you give me any stories or what's it like to interact with, someone that comes in either complaining or someone that has got a certain opinion that is so left field that you just got to somehow, keep it. How do you, just quickly switch someone off that's about to probably say something that they're going to regret? So what's the world of Talkback like?
Well, let's start with that last bit about if you get the feeling that somebody's going to go to a place which could be swearing's not so bad, Lokes. I think we unless it's one of the really bad couple of words, Swearing's all right. It's acceptable in context. So we have at ZB, what you were hearing on the radio is actually 8 seconds old. So we're in what's called delay. So at the start of the hour, don't ask me how, but what happens is that over a period of about 10 minutes, what you're hearing on the radio imperceptibly stretches out so that by 10 past the hour, what you're hearing on the radio is 8 seconds old. What that allows us to do is if somebody does say something that you don't want to go on the air, we have what's called the dump button. And if you hit the dump button, the last 8 seconds, you lose them and you come back live. Messy as hell on the air, but better than somebody saying a really bad word. Or more, the thing we really have to be careful about is if somebody slanders or libels somebody. Because then, even though we haven't been the one to do it, we've provided the medium through which that was done, and that is legally very sticky. So we're in delay all the time, so we do have a safety net as far as that's concerned. I've, touch wood, have never had to dump anybody, mainly because I do sports talkback, so there's not, there's occasionally people can get very emotional, but you can normally hear them getting to a point where, okay, this could go bad, and so you're always in control of the call. You can just click, it's on a screen. I can see I've got John there. John's talking on the air. I can, with a click of the mouse, I can put him on hold, or I can basically take him off the air by bringing down a fader. So I'm in control of the call, and you don't really. The way I see it is all opinions are welcome. Stupidity is a different thing. If somebody makes an inane point or a misinformed point, then I think it's our duty to call that out.
Right.
If somebody says something like, well, it has to be a hypothetical example. Logan Van Beek hasn't got a wicket for 3 games. What's he doing in the team?
You say hypothetical, I think that's quite true, actually.
No. So I can say, well, actually, Logan got 2 wickets the other day against Auckland, 3 against Central. Yeah, he didn't get a wicket against Northern, but he's got 5 in the last 3 games. So if it's factually incorrect, you have to call that out, because otherwise it becomes accepted as fact. So you can't have that. I enjoy being able to hear different views. I just think it's the radio audience. If you think of the radio audience as a percentage, only a very small number of people listening will ever call. There's some people who would be more likely to walk down the street with no clothes on than call talkback. Right. It's just something they would never do. I think there was a study done recently, and I think it was about 7% of the audience will ever interact with the radio station, whether that's calling for talkback or ringing up for a prize or sending a text or whatever. So 93% are just listening. That's all they're doing is just listening. So it's up to you to make sure that they're happy in their listening experience. But that's why I love new callers. People call up, oh, g'day Piney, first time caller, just thought I'd ring in.
Long time listener.
That's it. I just love that. So something you've said or the topic you've brought up has compelled them for the first time to pick up the phone and thought, oh, I'd quite like to join that conversation. I think I can add something to it. And Lokes, 99% of callers do add something to the discussion. They really do. And maybe it's different in general talkback outside of sport. I love the sports talkback in that. I mean, I look back to the Rugby World Cup last year when the All Blacks beat Ireland in the quarterfinal. That epic match. We just opened the lines and celebrated for 3 hours.
Really?
And as soon as a call went, we've got 5 lines coming into the studio. As soon as one call I said goodbye to, another one would take its place. So there was always a full board of 5 callers wanting to get on. Same with the Cricket World Cup in 2019. The barest of margins. I went on Radio Sport that morning at 9 o'clock. We'd all been up all night. And I said, look, this is just a therapy session. How are you feeling? Same again, just people, with their eyeballs hanging out because they've been up all night, watching us lose on a boundary countback. It was some of the best talkback I've been involved in, because it was like we were all sitting around in a counselling session. That's what it was like. So, yeah, the big fear is that you'll say, right, give us a yell and tell us what you think about X, Y, Z, and no one calls.
Crickets, yeah.
Yeah, it's a dark board, as we call it, and so. And those things, you just got to, there's a few strategies. You you basically just have to
talk to yourself.
Well, exactly. You have to be willing to do that. But then someone will send an email, or there'll be a text, or you see something online, and then someone will call in. There's always something.
Yeah.
But then but you can only flog a dead horse for so long. If you chuck out some talkback hooks, as we call them, and nobody bites, and you throw them out again in a slightly different way or whatever, and there's still no bites, you got to move on.
Yeah.
You say, okay, well, no one's biting on this. Let's move on to something else.
Now you're in your prime. I've listened to you. I've seen you in action. I've been in the studio and watched you do your thing, and all this is coming off you prepare really well, but it's all just super experienced, and you're just doing it. Let's rewind a little bit to 25-year-old Jason, and he's in Wairarapa or down in Nelson.
Yep.
First time doing a sports talkback show or a sports morning show. What was that Jason like?
A lot more nervous but excited. It's a really good question. I think I've always felt a sense of, I don't think it's privilege necessarily, but luck, and I feel privileged to do what I do because I know that, probably like you, and 1,000 people would swap places with me in a heartbeat. I've often said if you're in the media, you better want to be in it because there's a lot of people who would love to do it. You probably see that it's probably the same in sport. Putting to one side the very, very hard work that you have to do to get there. It's not just handed to you. People say, "Oh man, I'd love to play cricket for Wellington. I'd love to play sport for a living. I'd love to talk on the radio. I'd love to be on TV. I'd love to, because they're exciting things to do." But and so I've never taken it for granted, but I've always taken it very seriously. In some, at some times in my career too seriously, and I've got myself tied up in knots and very, worried about little pieces of feedback that don't mean anything.
So go a little bit deeper with that.
Someone will just say something offhand to you. Oh, you mucked that up. Oh, or somebody will see that the age of social media now allows anybody to have an opinion about you, whether they know you or not. Back then, I think in the 90s, when I was in my 20s, social media wasn't even a thing, but people could still ring, or they might see you and say something, or someone might say, some mate of mine said that you were on the radio the other day and you said this, and so you could get that feedback, direct or indirect. And for a long time, my skin wasn't thick enough to absorb it. So I would stew on stuff for hours, and then you over time come to the realization that only the feedback, the only feedback that's important is from the people who are important to you.
Right. Yeah.
The people who are, for you, it's your coaches and your family. For me, it's my bosses and my family and my close circle of friends. And a mantra I've been living by for the last couple of years is that if a person's phone number isn't in my phone, then their feedback doesn't actually mean anything. Yes, it's valid. If someone says to me, "Hey, you don't do enough American sport. Why don't you do some more American sport?" That's actually quite good feedback. Oh, you do too much rugby. That's interesting feedback, but it's also, rugby's the base of what we do on the station. But if someone says something like, "You don't know what you're talking about," or one I get a lot is stick to football.
Yeah.
It's just a faceless, nameless number on a screen that doesn't really mean anything to me. Yes, it's hard to see it because everyone wants to be liked, Lokes. Everyone would love to be universally liked, but really you've got to find a way to filter the feedback, and everybody in the media has to do it because, as I said before, nobody is going to be universally popular. But a piece of feedback from a good mate of mine who texts me and says, "Mate, that was just such a great interview you just did with XYZ." That is. And similarly, if they say, "Hey, I'm not sure you quite hit the mark with that," if my boss says, "Hey, I liked what you did there, but I'm not sure that was quite right," that's feedback I'll take on board. That's valid to me because he's my boss. He's my mate. But this guy over here is just 026, 027, 126. It doesn't mean anything to me. So, yeah.
That's very similar for sports people.
Yeah.
With social media, we're constantly You play a game and we're on TV. I've had experience in the last few weeks of being in the pressure moment, and you fail in the pressure moment, and it's embarrassing, it's horrible, and I'm already feeling all the feelings that you can feel. And of course, as soon as you turn your phone on, you get lots of messages, mainly on social media about, why do you do that? Why do you do that? You're an idiot, and things like that. And I'm not the only one who has received this. And you got to learn to have that thick skin. And that piece of advice where you talk about, if the person's number is not on your contact list, then it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
And that was a great piece of advice I got a while back as well. And even after that moment, I got some wonderful messages from friends who reminded me of who I am and what I'm about and what I've done in the past and things like that. And it definitely was special to receive those messages in that moment after a poor performance, because every man and the dog texts you after a good performance, and that's easy. But it's the people that are willing to message you when you are feeling down, or you've made a mistake or things like that, to give you feedback and advice and things like that.
Just pick up on that. Everybody makes mistakes, and everybody has bad days. Sports people, everyone has a bad day. Even Ian Smith, a guy I admire greatly, hugely. He's made a couple of high-profile mistakes, but they haven't defined him. It's just something that happens. None of us are perfect. We're all just out here doing our best, and I guess media is kind of similar to sport in that you are in the public eye a little bit.
There's a performance element.
Yeah, of course, absolutely. That's exactly it. And so it comes with the territory.
You create good relationships, great relationships with sporting people. Obviously, a lot of the Phoenix, the All Whites, the Hurricanes. This is mainly in Wellington sport. Here with the Firebirds, the Blaze, and the netball. Everyone, everyone's never had a bad word to say about Jason Pine. That's one of the pieces of feedback, and I know that for sure, and having known you for a number of years now. How do you go about a talkback show or a radio show when you have to be critical about someone's performance that you have a relationship with?
Yeah, it's tough. And I'm not that good at it, if I'm honest. I'm not, and I do try to live my life in a positive way. Therefore, it's much easier for me to give praise. But I think you can't hold a position like I do, where people expect you to be honest and to give constructive critique. Otherwise, it's just like, well, what is this? It's like you said before. It's like people who only text you when things are going well. If a team has played poorly, you have to be able to unpack that and critique it. Now, the thing that I've always tried to do is critique the performance, not the person. Because just because a striker misses an open goal doesn't make them a moron. It just means that they missed an open goal. If a team is not playing well and have lost 3 or 4 games in a row, well, a couple of things. They're not bad people, and they haven't become bad players overnight. But something's happening here. They're just not tracking their man as well as they used to. Their positioning is poor. They're not getting up to win their headers. They're not contesting at set piece time, whatever it might be. So that's critiquing performance. But it's a really interesting one, and especially in a small country like New Zealand. And often there's this perception that the media are a little bit afraid of criticising because their access to players, coaches will be cut off. And it's a fine balancing act, because, players can read or hear something that you say about them and they're like, well, what does he know? He's never played. He's never played. And to be honest, my number might not be in their phone. So it actually doesn't matter. I'm pretty sure that most sports people don't listen to Talkback Radio. I'm pretty sure most of them don't read the comments on Facebook or on, the articles on the Herald or stuff or whatever it might be. I would imagine that a lot of players, after they have a really good game, would like to go and see, what are people saying about me, But if you're willing to do that, if you're happy to do that, then you have to be happy to go on when you've got that first ball or whatever it might be. But I've just tried to be, I guess, myself as much as I can. I don't try to be someone I'm not. I don't like when I meet up with you. I don't have I'm meeting Logan. I better put on my happy face.
Yeah.
I just genuinely believe that you should leave a room with the person you've been feeling better than when you walked into the room. That is a genuine desire of mine, and it gets you through most of your difficult times. If you can, like I don't just come off the cuff and say, what a terrible performance that was. I'll look at it, I'll try and analyse it, I'll write down some thoughts, and what I present on the air, for the most part, isn't off the cuff. Some of it is, but most of it's like done because I've watched, I've analysed, I've prepped whatever I'm going to say. So, yeah, it's a very difficult balancing act. And look, I'm sure that when I have critiqued people, they've gone, "What's he talking about?" You know, but it's part of the job. You know, we're paid to have opinions. We're paid to engage people in what we're doing on the air. And in sport, that's about the players.
You just mentioned a couple of kind of core values that you live by leaving a room better than you entered it. You're just positive all year round. Were these lessons that you learnt from your parents, from mentors? Where did these kind of core values develop?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, my parents are both very positive people. And I had a very good upbringing. You know, there was no hardship in my family. You know, we were well loved. Me and my siblings. Mum and Dad provided for us, gave us opportunities. So you know, there was never any hardship there. But I think, yeah. I mean, I'm a bit older now, like, so I'm in my 50s now. So, but I like to think I've sort of tried to see the best in people and situations for most of my adult life. And I don't actually know where it comes from, to be honest. I just think it's just the way that I try to live my life, really. You know, we deal with all sorts of people every single day. You know, you meet people and people come in and out of your life, and I don't know. I just would like to be somebody who people don't cross the road to avoid. You know,
right?
And to try and some people, you know, and I'm sure people think, you know, that sometimes I have a rose tinted view of the world, or I'm blinkered in my views, or you know, for whatever reason, positivity is sometimes seen as a personality flaw. I think if you can balance it, if you're not just, I mean, if my house burns down, I'm not going to say, "Oh, what a beautiful blaze," you know, but to approach most situations with a positive mindset and try and see the good in people. I just like living my life that way. I feel like that's, you know, a lot less tiring than being grumpy all the time. Yeah. You know, it takes a lot of effort to find fault, you know, and to be negative. I find it's a lot easier to be positive.
So how have you translated it for your children, Johnny and Emma, being a parent? Is that, you know, because everyone's different, everyone's got their own personalities and things like that. So what's some of the kind of core values that you've tried to instill in them?
From I guess every parent kind of models the way for their kids. You know, you can sit down and say to them, okay, Johnny, be positive. Emma, be good to people. You know, have good manners, all that stuff. You can tell them. But I think, you know, kids learn by watching their parents. One thing I've always tried with my two kids is to have them engage in conversation with adults from a young age. Yes. And that's just something as simple as ordering their own food. If we went to Macca's and we go up to the counter, and often you see, and there's nothing wrong with it, but like a parent and a child will be there, and the person will say, "What would you like?" And the adult will order on behalf of the child. From the age of about 6 or 7, I've asked my kids to order their own food. So if they say, person says, "Okay, what would you like?" I say, "Johnny, what would you like today?"
Fish fingers.
Yeah, no, exactly. we're at McDonald's. They don't have them. It may be a fillet of fish for you, but just for Johnny, never shake a man's hand sitting down. Look someone in the eye when you shake their hands and when you talk to them. Those are kind of like things I've taught. Those are little lessons. Those aren't things he's learnt from me, but those are the things I do. But I think I mean, being a parent's an amazing thing. It's there is nothing like the unconditional love that you feel for your children, and just the deep sense of wanting the best for them, and you see them go through adversity, and because you've been through it yourself, but you just want to take the pain away sometimes. Emma's been involved in music and singing, and I took her along to audition for a stage show when she was about 8 or 9, and she got through to the final audition, and then she was cut. And I remember just being heartbroken for her and wanting to take the pain away and think, how can I make this better? But I couldn't, So you just know that all you can do at that time is just be there for them. So I guess I think of it this way: if I live my life in a positive way, then hopefully that'll rub off. They're going to be. I mean, Emma's 20, Johnny's 16. They're young adults now. They'll make their own decisions. But all you can hope for is that you've given them the grounding to make good decisions, really.
No, that's great advice. Great advice. You've obviously found your true calling. You found your purpose. You found your why, and that's behind the microphone. You spoke about you've always wanted to be on radio, on television, behind the mic, calling sports games. You're doing exactly that. You found your calling. But Jason Pine actually went to university and studied to become a lawyer. So back then, or actually just to finish it off, he actually failed his law exam, which was the best thing that ever could happen, because then that led to going to broadcasting school and changing your degree, doing a BA, and then going off to broadcasting school. So did you know that it was going to be behind the mic, or did you think, all right, no, I better be a lawyer, I'm good at speaking? How did you discover your why? How did you discover your purpose?
Yeah, you're right. I was always a talker at school, always a chatter. I used to like debating, speech, that sort of stuff, always a chatter. So I thought, well, law is a natural thing for me to do. And you're right, I failed the first year. And at the time, it was the biggest catastrophe of my young life, really. Because at the very first hurdle, I'd stumbled on my way to becoming a lawyer.
And side note, you were head boy at
Tawa College,
and so like that kind of image of like, right, he's head boy, he's going to go on and have a great career and yada.
And I'd never been a straight A student, but I'd passed everything pretty well at school. So that was the first experience of academic failure that I'd ever had. And as I've been 19 years old, as a 19-year-old trying to navigate that. And so you're right, I cross-credited, did a BA with a major in politics. It was coming towards the end of it, and I didn't really have any idea what I wanted to do. So I was only halfway through my final year. And a friend of mine had been to broadcasting school and he got a job at a radio station called More FM. And he did the graveyard shift, which doesn't even exist anymore. They just do it they don't even have announcers in the middle of the night anymore. It just is run off computer. But he was on from midnight till 6 on More FM. And he said, why don't you come in and have a look at what I do? So 1 o'clock in the morning, one morning, I went in there. And by about 1:15, I thought, man, this is great. This is not necessarily at 1 in the morning, but this is what I want to do. And I'd always had, like I said before, I'd always had an interest because I'd be commentating in the backyard and that sort of stuff. But I didn't really know that I didn't know how to get to that. I knew that if I wanted to be a lawyer, I'd do a law degree. There seemed like an obvious pathway to that. I didn't really know how to get into the media, really. And so when I found that, there is a way, it's called broadcasting school, and here's how you apply for it, I was like, okay, well, this could be me. And so I applied, got in, and the rest is history, really. I've never really done anything else. It's always been, tied up with, radio's kind of been the anchor of it. I've done television and I've written for, various things, and it's led into, commentary and other bits and pieces, but radio's always sat at the middle of it, really. That's all I've ever really known. But yeah, I think I probably would have found my way there. Let's just say I'd got 7% more, and instead of getting 43 in first year law, I'd got 50. I probably would have carried on and done 4 years, presuming I hadn't failed second or third, whatever. And then I would have got a law degree and presumably gone into the business of law. But I kind of would like to think that I would have found my way here.
Yeah.
I hope I would have. At the time, as I say, that 7% was the biggest catastrophe of my life. But in looking back, it just kind of sped up my journey to where I actually feel I was always going to be, really.
And you then went on to spend 28 years at News Talk ZB and radio, and you took a chance a few years ago where you thought, SENZ Radio, SENZ, offered you an opportunity to kind of pretty much set up their whole kind of radio station and lead that. You finished at ZB, went over, 3 months later, came back. So what was that kind of process or that whole thing like in terms of, going from somewhere where you felt at home, you know exactly what you were doing, SENZ came up with this opportunity, you took it, 3 months later, no thanks. Because there's a lot of, the thing I admire about it is that you kind of quickly knew that, no, this is not me. No, I'm in the content producing, that's where my home is. How did that all kind of play out? Yeah,
my best mate's got a great saying, and that's fail quickly.
Yeah.
Which I did there. I don't think I failed the job necessarily, but not everything you try on is going to fit. And I'd been in the same place for a long time, and this opportunity came along, as you say, to set up a sports radio station. And if you listen to the last whatever it's been, that's something that for me, it's like, what an opportunity. And I think in many ways my ego probably drove me to take the job, because I thought, I can do this. I'm Jason Pine. I've been around for a while. This is my calling at this time of my life.
Right.
And I've got a huge amount of respect for the people who I worked with at SENZ who are still there doing great work, but it just wasn't for me. And I felt when I left after only 3 months, I felt for a long time deeply ashamed of that. And people would say, like you just said, you worked out quickly that it wasn't for you and moved on. See, some people would even say to me, hey, that was a courageous thing to do. I felt the opposite of courageous.
Right.
I felt like a coward for walking away from an opportunity that had been presented to me, and not following through
nice
with it.
Love it.
Following through with it.
Yeah.
But with a couple of years hindsight, it was the right decision. It was the right decision. It was, the 3 months I had there were in equal parts invigorating, frightening, stressful, eye-opening, but ultimately not the right fit for me. And I look around now and people change jobs all the time. They give things a crack and it doesn't work and they do something else. So I'm no different from them really, but when it was me, someone who prided themselves on following through, on having high integrity, being a solid kind of a guy, I felt that I had not lived up to those expectations of myself. But, the people's opinions of me that mattered were all of the same opinion. You've made the right decision here. You gave it a go. And, Lokes, I'm pleased I gave it a go, because had I not taken that opportunity, I always would have wondered, I wonder what it'll be like over there. Well, that grass looks green,
Did you have that in that 28 years, kind of any other periods where you got given opportunities or things like that came about? Or is this really for me? Yeah,
that to be honest with you, that was the first real one. There were other little, hey, what about this? Or but that was the first concrete approach and offer I'd been given. And it just arrived. I mean, it was early 2021. So COVID had come and Radio Sport had been closed down. And so there was that hole. I'd still retained a role with ZB. But I was starting to think, okay, well, because SENZ has taken the place of radio sport in our radio landscape. So I thought, well, gee, is that, that's right in my wheelhouse. And yeah, and I think I was right in thinking those things, but I was just the wrong person for the role. And yeah, but I don't regret it. I met some great people, and I found my way back to what I really want to be doing. So yeah, it's all worked out okay. But yeah, I mean, yeah, not everything you try is going to fit, and that just didn't fit me.
And you're back behind the mic. You're producing content, which is fantastic, but you're also a mentor to a lot of people in the industry. Adam Cooper, I spoke to him in the lead up just to try and get a little bit of inside information, and he only speaks highly of you, and he said that everyone only speaks highly of you, and we've caught up a number of times, and a lot of the times we're not actually talking about cricket, we're talking about life after cricket and how to kind of go about, and is the media that kind of where I want to head down, is it not? And it's always been so nice to talk to you and have a conversation around that. And you are a mentor to a lot of people now. Who was that mentor for you going through the early 20s stage? And how did they guide you, and how did you go about finding a mentor?
Yeah, I don't think I ever had one real mentor as I was coming through radio. I've kind of taken bits and pieces from a lot of people, and I think the other thing is people have, and I don't think even mentoring is the right word, but guided me without probably even realizing it.
Right.
Just by being themselves and me observing. Okay, so that's how you do it. I worked with a guy in Wellington who's passed away by the name of Justin Dufresne. He'd been in radio for ever, and he was doing Talkback 9 to noon on ZB in Wellington. He could have easily just turned up at 8 o'clock. He was always the first one at work at 5 o'clock.
Wow.
He was always the first one there, even after doing it for 40 years. He would put in 4 hours of work off the air for his 3 hours of work on the air, every single day without fail. And so that to me spoke of okay, this is what you need to do. It's the 5 P's that preparation prevents poor performance. It's another mantra. You can pick these out as much as you like, but I've been very fortunate to work alongside a lot of great people. A number of them, and Justin was one. Another one was Graham Moody, iconic rugby commentator, sportscaster. When I came back to Wellington from Nelson in 1999, I came back in a management role, and he was one of my staff, if you like. Here's a guy who I just admired and listened to for years, and I had this anxiety. How am I going to manage a guy like him? And it wasn't just him; it was all of these kind of people who had been in the industry for years and had deep experience. And I was really just I would have been 29 years old, just trying to finding my way. First big management job, really. But they were all, and Moods in particular, so accepting of this kid coming in to try and add some energy to the station. And he in many ways actually taught me stuff that one of the lessons that he taught me was that you should talk to the Prime Minister in the same way you talk to the work experience student. That everybody is the same effectively. He also was great at making you realise at the end of the day it was just a job. It's not life. Yes, we take it seriously, and in the media and in sport, often it's more than just a job, a 9 to 5. It's not a 9 to 5, and we can get deeply invested in it because we love it. But at the end of the day, it's just a job. On our deathbed, we're not calling for our laptop for another email. We're not. We're calling for the people who we care about the most. He was always very good at just resetting me and seeing when I was stressed and say, Jace. And he had this grin of his as he'd head off. His favourite time of the week was, obviously in the winter he did rugby back then, but his favourite time of the week was Friday afternoon when he would head over the hill with his wife to the Wairarapa to go surfing.
Right.
They had a little shack out the back of Martinborough somewhere, no internet, no phone coverage.
Yeah, awesome.
They cook their own food, boil the jug for a coffee, go surfing. You know, he was at his happiest when he was as close to nature like that. And yet, he was one of the best rugby commentators we have ever had. But he found this balance, you know?
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome. And I'm sure you're passing those tips on to the young presenter that comes in. And
yeah, I hope so. I don't know whether I necessarily am doing a great job of it. I hope I am. Because I can, I listen to you talk, and it's very, very nice to hear these things, but let me list some of my faults for you. Very, very anal. Don't like it when things aren't as they should be. I don't like it when people are late, for example. I can get I get fixated on small things that don't matter in the overall scheme of things. I worry incessantly about stuff that is beyond my control. I can be a bit of a control freak. These are the things that I've always thought of weaknesses as overplayed strengths. Wow. So being well prepared is a strength. Being a warrior about what haven't I done is a weakness. The worrying is the overplayed strength.
Wow.
And I think I hope I model the way well for people, and I do and I love working with younger people because they keep me young. In an industry where I'm now at the upper end of the age spectrum, the fact that I work every day with guys like Adam Cooper, who is a terrific young broadcaster, by the way. I first met him, he was a year 11 at Wellington College, and his careers advisor knew someone I worked with who said, we've got this kid up at Dub C. He's quite keen on, radio. Can he come in? I said, yeah, he can come in. So this 15, 16-year-old Adam Cooper comes in his Wellington College uniform, and straight away I just got a feeling, this kid's got a bit about him. He's not just, this isn't just what am I going to do on work experience day? So I said, mate, why don't you, here's a weather forecast. Just pretend you're reading the weather. Go into here. Here's how you turn the mic on and off. Just record this for me. Anyway, he's done this weather. And I'm like, it was as good as I was doing. Yeah. So awesome. He was always going to find his way. But the young people I work with keep me young. They'll call me out on stuff. Like I'll tell dreadful dad jokes. That's my contribution to our workplace. And they'll roll their eyes and laugh along. But I feel invigorated by the people I work with. And so if I can help them, and maybe I think to myself, maybe something I do that I don't even realise, they're looking and going, okay. So
that's it, actions again.
Yeah. Rather than let's have an hour together and I'll tell you how to do this radio thing. That wouldn't be very good. But if by observing me getting there early, making sure I'm prepped, treating people the same, treasuring the role that we're lucky enough to have. If that's something they observe and take on board, then great.
You've mentioned preparation a few times, and your MCing. I've witnessed at our sports awards a number of times. I've been to a couple other awards nights where you've MC'd, and I'm sure you've MC'd this, that, and the other. Your preparation and your detail that you go into when anyone coming up to speak, your opening remarks, your closing remarks, and the way that you you hold the room with so much class, so much patience, but also you're just a master of ceremonies.
Good.
It's something that I really admire because it's something I would like to get into as well. How do you go about that kind of preparation, and what's it feel like to go out there and MC a big event?
Well, first thing I'll say is that I have major butterflies bordering on anxiety before every MC gig that I do. Many's the time I've been driving to one of them and think to myself, I'm just going to turn around.
Yeah, you too.
I'm going to go home and ring up and say, I'm sick. I can't do it. Yeah. I haven't had to do that yet. But the best part of an MC job is when it's over.
Yeah.
And you've filled the brief And my favourite beer is the post-MC beer. I never drink during a job, obviously, but a beer afterwards is the sweetest tasting beer that there is for me anyway. I just feel like if somebody has entrusted me with the microphone for their event that they have spent hours, days, weeks, sometimes months putting together, the least I can do is put some work in to make sure that my piece of the night goes well. They've got to worry about catering, about ticketing, making sure all of the awards are there. They've got to find the award that this guy hasn't brought back. They've got to, book the room. 100 bits of organisation go into an event, and I'm just one of those. So if they can not worry about me, that's one less thing for them to worry about. I think I have a sense of professional pride, and it probably goes back to what I said before. I'm a bit anal about stuff. I don't want to ever come away really gutted with how I've gone. I've come away sometimes and thought I could have probably done that better. That wasn't as good as I hoped, but I just take it seriously. Again, I know I'm in a very, very privileged position. I get the chance to come I come into the inner sanctum of Cricket Wellington for the Firebirds and the Blaze awards evenings. You can't buy a ticket for that. You're invited to that. So I've been invited into a pretty privileged little group of high performers. So I ain't getting up there and not performing. There's no way. As far as putting people at ease is concerned, I really enjoy the little Q&As that I get to do if a person wins an award, come up and you ask them a couple of questions. And I know most people hate that. They want to get their award and sit down. And so I'm on their side with that, but it's part of the brief. And so let's make this as easy as possible. Let's have a bit of fun with it. I'm not going to throw you under a bus up here. I'm not going to make you look stupid in front of your new girlfriend who you've just brought along or whatever it might be. Let's everybody in the room, especially at awards nights like that, wants people to succeed on that night. You know what I mean? They want people that nobody wants embarrassment. Nobody wants anything that's cringeworthy. And so I feel like I've developed the ability to read a room in that way. You know when somebody doesn't really, when, okay, if the brief has asked them 4 or 5 questions, you know when 2 questions is enough. Similarly, when, hey, this is a bit of gold here, we're going to get some great stuff here that people are going to say, shit, wasn't he good? Yeah. And you can, like when I do it with you, I've done Q&As with you, and I know that I can throw stuff to you and you'll come back with some gold. So, I'm keen to do that. Yeah. But I do enjoy it. Like I say, major anxiety before every single one. But I always look back at them with a sense of pride because it's helped an event come together, I guess. Yeah.
Well, it's similar to even just doing this podcast. There is a preparation element to it. I'm going to get Jason to comment on my setup and give me a bit of a review on mics and camera and studio setup and things like that. But it's definitely afterwards, and I've already had the feeling throughout this podcast as well. It's like I'm sitting here, I'm going, this is so cool. I get to interview someone who's so comfortable behind the microphone, it sounds so great behind the microphone, but it has so much experience behind the microphone. And no, it's an absolute pleasure. Jason, I want to finish off this podcast with your most favorite sporting story. And well, we've already mentioned the football, the All Whites 2009, but is there a sporting story of an individual or team that you have either done some content for, or interviews, or whatever it was that kind of is your favorite story?
I've had a few. I've been very lucky. I'll tell you one which isn't my favourite first, very very quickly. I was at the Sevens when the Sevens were quite new. It was either the year 2000 or 2001. The stadium had just opened here in Wellington. New Zealand were playing, and in between games, the media were allowed into the players' area to do interviews. And I went down after New Zealand's game, and I can't remember who the manager was, but he knew it was time, and so there was a couple of us there. And he goes, "Oh, who would you like to talk to?" And I said, "Oh, would Jonah be available?" He goes, yeah, he's just over there in the corner. Go and chat to him. So I went and sat down. This is the year 2000, 2001. Remember Jonah, 1995 World Cup, the biggest star in rugby. I went and sat down next to Jonah Lomu in the corner of, it wasn't even the main changing room at the stadium because there's so many teams. It was almost like a little afterthought little change room. I sat next to Jonah and had 4 or 5 minutes with him, and it was like, I really can't describe it. I was in the presence of greatness. It was like, it must be what people are like when they've met Muhammad Ali,
Right.
or when they've met Michael Jordan. I know Jonah isn't those guys, but he was
Well, for New Zealanders,
iconic. From the top of the North Island to the bottom of the South, you could show a picture of Jonah Lomu to pretty much anyone over the age of 10, and they'd say that's Jonah. So he's up there. He was the most humble, the most softly spoken, the most gentle yet generous man. He didn't have to do it. He could have easily said to the manager, "I am doing a media." It was just a 5 minutes that I have always really cherished.
Amazing.
Really cherished. That's not my favourite one. I think my favourite one is, there was a Fijian footballer called Roy Krishna, who played for Wellington Phoenix. Absolutely terrific guy. Midway through a season, there was a very difficult season the Phoenix had, and there was a clause in his contract. If he played a certain number of games, it triggered an extension of his contract, and he didn't like the coach that year, so he didn't want to trigger the extension. That's how I read it anyway. So I thought anyway, feigned injury. I thought he just basically withdrew his services. And I wrote about that and I really liked Roy Krishna, loved him. And I said, Roy Krishna, he needs to man up and play for this team. This team needs him. And I saw him a short time after that, and he confronted me on it. And he said, Piney, that's what you wrote is absolutely out of order. That is not what I'm doing. I was injured, but and he basically, for a real gentle, softly spoken guy, he let me have it. He let me have it. He told me exactly what he thought. And I said, Roy, I stand by my comments of what I wrote, because there was other stuff as well, but I appreciate your honesty. Anyway, a couple of years later, he won the Wellington Sportsman of the Year. He stayed at the Phoenix when it looked as though he would leave, and I was emceeing the Wellington Sports Awards, and I knew he'd won because we handed the winners in advance. And I announced Sportsman of the Year. You do the finalists are Roy Krishna, and the winner of the Sportsman of the Year is Roy Krishna. And he walked up on the stage, and there are 2 lecterns on the stage, one where I was and one where the winners go. He came up on the stage, and instead of going into his lectern, he came to my lectern, shook my hand, gave me a hug, and then went across and did his acceptance speech. And only the 2 of us knew the history. Yeah. But I thought to myself, that is a very, very special guy. A very special guy. So, and I love Roy and his wife Nazia. They've got a little baby now, but older now. And I still keep in touch with Roy. Without fail, he always asks about Johnny, my son. How's Johnny going? How's Johnny going? He's still playing. I don't know why that sticks out for me, but he was honest with me, but then we moved on from it. And I remember I almost choked up when I read his name out, even though I knew he'd won it. When I read his name out, I remember I got it caught in my throat a little bit, because I knew what he'd been through and all that sort of stuff. So, and this big Fijian smile of his, he's just an absolute diamond. Yeah,
that's a wonderful story to finish on. Jason, thank you so much for joining me on the follow through of LVB. You are someone that I look up to when it comes to just being positive, and I pride myself on being positive as well. And again, I've finished another conversation with you, and I'm feeling motivated. I wish we could just keep going on and on and But no, we're gonna leave it there, and hopefully, down the track we can go again and even review some of the podcast, or hopefully my gear maybe improves from there. But thank you so much for joining me. I hope you have a wonderful 2024. No doubt we'll be catching up for coffee very soon and shooting the shit. But thank you very much.
Can I just say, I am in deep admiration for the way you've followed through. The thing I find deeply fascinating is what athletes do post being an athlete. It's a fascinating thing for me. I think the way that you've, tried a bunch of stuff, including this, is a sense of, I feel very proud of you. Knowing you, I feel very proud of you, and I know that you're going to go, into a lot of different things post-cricket, and I just can't wait to see what those things are. The setup's amazing. I can see the basin, my field of dreams out behind your left shoulder. Keep being you, man. Keep following through. It's been such a pleasure to be here.
You're a legend. Thanks, Jace.